Welcome to Season 7 of Wellness as a Way of Life for Women Building the Future. I'm Megan Swan, wellness coach, consultant, and strategist, here to champion visionary women who are shaping tomorrow. This season, we dive into holistic wellness practices, mindset shifts, and real life stories from women who are leading change in tech, entrepreneurship, and beyond. My mission is to help you integrate wellness into every facet of your journey, so much so that it feels like a way of life. So you can show up as your most vibrant and impactful self. You can be a part of the movement by subscribing to my Substack for exclusive wellness tools, inspiring interviews, and a thriving community of future builders. There is a free and soon-to-be paid option launching this fall. And if you enjoy this episode, share it with a friend who's building the future too. Welcome back to Wellness as a Way of Life for Women Building the Future. Today, we're sitting down with Laura Costello, Managing Director and Lead Consultant of LVC International, who spent years mastering the art and science of negotiation in the consumer packaged goods industry. Laura brings her extensive international business experience to help companies navigate complex deals, scale sustainably, and seize new market opportunities. But what really lights her up these days is her coaching work, especially with women who are ready to step into their negotiating power. Laura's on a mission to help us put aside the stereotypes and self-doubt that hold us back, to reframe what negotiation is really about, and to shift the power dynamic so we can advocate for ourselves with confidence and impact. She's also a mom of 2 under the age of 4, bless her, juggling it all with grace, I'm sure. And yes, you'll get to hear she has a sweet New Zealand accent. Whether you're negotiating a business deal, a salary, or simply your own boundaries, this conversation is going to give you the tools and the mindset shift you need. Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Megan. Great to be here. Thank you for the lovely intro. And
How are
yes,
you
New
this
Zealand
morning?
accent. I'm good. I'm good. I've had the kids out the door and off to their daycare. So yeah, things are good. I'm ready for the day.
So important for a little peace of mind to focus on your work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I know that you're an expert on the neuroscience behind this, and I'd love to kind of dive into that piece because I think the more that we can understand, that our what maybe seem like weaknesses are just natural, it's quite empowering, and it shifts into a different narrative that you can rely on when you're going into a negotiation. But first, like, what are some of the things that you find like that women are kind of sticky energy around this with all of your work over the years?
Yeah, so it's and I've really as you captured in the intro, I really kind of fell into this as a little bit of a passion project and something that I'm really I want to help with because I see all the time and I often talk to female entrepreneurs in my line of work, and the number one thing they say is, oh, I'm terrible at negotiating. I feel like I'm in control of other areas of my business, or my professional life, but I'm terrible at negotiating. I get so nervous and I don't really know how to react or handle the situation. I always feel like I leave something on the table. And that's really what sparked this entire coaching journey for me, was realizing that, I think we have a traditional model of what we think negotiation looks like and what makes you successful in negotiation. And it's very much set in this, honestly, myth of the, aggressive, probably masculine tendencies, where and traits, and I really felt that we're getting stuck in this loop of predetermining how a negotiation is going to look. And so when I have a conversation with somebody and they say to me, I'm terrible at negotiation, I feel almost instantly, I can imagine that they're determining how it's going to go, because it's a story that we have in our minds. So yeah, I think it gets sticky for some women because we feel that what makes a powerful negotiator is somebody who is aggressive. They don't back down. They're, the killer of the deal, this kind of thing. And really, when you think about what negotiation is at its core, it's getting to an agreement and cooperating. And I'm, you know, after all the deals I've negotiated and watched and been part of, I will say that tenderness, kindness, and cooperation are often much more effective than this aggressive, traditional view of what we think is a great negotiator.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm currently reading Never Split the Difference by,
It's a great book, yeah.
yeah.
Christmas, yeah.
So I'd love first to dive a little bit more into, like obviously you have decades of experience, but for you personally, like in an internal compass, was it that you started studying things that helped you get better, or was it simply like experience over time and looking back and realizing, oh, like I've actually embodied this now and it feels natural to begin with?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I really thought I was terrible at it. I thought same as a lot of women really. I really felt like, I'm just not confident enough. I'm heading into these, and early in my career, the deals I was making were big, big deals, and they were with very experienced senior managers in some global corporations. So I really just felt that I was out of my league and that I didn't really understand how to do it. So for me, the epiphany really was after going through a few different negotiation training courses, I realized, you know what? I actually, I where I'm getting to has always been very effective. And there was almost an aha moment for me where I realized that when you listen, you're hearing so much more about what needs to happen in this whole agreement. There's very, very seldom a deal that you're making that is transactional, that it's one piece. Most of the time, when you're trying to get to some kind of arrangement with somebody, there's a lot of other factors that have a part of it. And I'm talking, there might be a financial part of it for sure. There's usually also timing. There's usually also resourcing. There's, you know, position of whatever it is you're dealing with. So what I guess where I realized that this was something that I was effective at, and that I had felt that I was at the point of, yes, I can understand this and I can help other people learn this, was really when I understood that listening was the biggest superpower heading into any kind of deal, any kind of um, um, negotiation or conflict even. That was the biggest point for me. And that probably
Which
came midway through my career, really.
which women are naturally good at. So it leads me into my next question. There's like really fascinating neuroscience showing that when women negotiate for themselves, their brains actually light up differently from when they
Yeah.
negotiate for others. Almost like there's
Yeah.
an internal conflict happening. Can you talk
Yeah.
to us about that? And I know like I can resonate with that in terms of, like I always feel personally like it's easier to sell somebody else's thing that I
Yeah.
deeply believe in than like selling my own services. Um, yeah, so just help us understanding us reframe negotiation as an act of soft power rather than aggression.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much going on in this instance. And you're right. Every time I run a seminar and I say to people, what is the hardest negotiation that you ever have? Every single time it's negotiating my own salary or negotiating something that, my service cost or something that you're asking for yourself. And really there is so much neuroscience behind that. And I don't have a degree in this at all, in this area at all, but it's something I'm very passionate about. And I would say, when you dig into the neuroscience of what happens when you're in a conflict, really what you're seeing is your amygdala taking over. So that's the area of your brain that's in the limbic system. It's the emotion. It's the one that really triggers that flight or fight response.
Mm.
It's going to flood your system with cortisol. So you're going to be stressed and you're going to have that flight or fight response. And when we're advocating for ourselves, this is usually the area that's triggered because we're feeling under threat ourselves. So when we're advocating for someone else, we've got that little bit of point of difference where you can have a lens on it and it's not a threat to you personally. So when
Mm,
you're advocating for yourself, that really is what happens. And not for everybody, a lot of people have learned to calm that cortisol reaction and that amygdala takeover and work through it. But often for us specifically, and for women, when we're advocating for ourselves, this hijack happens. And when that happens, you're moving all of your decision making into that limbic system, which is not a rational part of your brain. This is the emotional part of your brain. This is the part that goes, I'm not good enough, that you're having that self doubt talk and you're thinking, oh my God, how can I get out of this situation as fast as possible? So you might end up making a deal with someone or agreeing to something, but it's usually the kind of deal where you walk away and you think, oh, I wish I'd done better at that. Oh, I should have said this. I should have done that. What we're trying to do and what sort of I coach through is trying to calm that amygdala takeover and be very wary of it, be aware that it's happening, use the tools that can work against that takeover. Oxygen's great, getting up and
mm,
moving, pausing, reflecting, these sorts of things are going to help calm that reaction down. They're going to give you time to process that cortisol. And then you can move your decision making into the prefrontal cortex at the front of your brain, in that frontal lobe, where you can really think about what you're advocating for. You can have a more rational discussion about it, and it makes it a lot easier to advocate for yourself. But that's exactly what happens is when you're advocating for yourself, if you're feeling that you're not doing a good job of it and you're, oh my God, I needed to get out of there, that's generally what's happening in the brain. And it's really normal. It's really there's nothing wrong with it. It's what our brain's wired to do. But being aware of it can help move through that and find some other tools that just help us feel more effective in those situations where we're advocating for ourselves.
mm. Can you speak? Because I mean, I have seen, I work on this with clients as well, where particularly as women, like anyone we perceive as an authority. And of course, like I'm sure you had the
Yeah,
experience going to these rooms, making these deals where
yeah,
like you're just deciding who has more power, who's
absolutely.
more experience, and therefore like you're acting differently and kind of
Yeah,
this what's the word I'm looking for? Like I feel this really annoying kind of like cowering just when and it's like not necessarily true. Like
yeah,
you're just deciding that this person thinks that they're better than you or more experienced or have
yeah,
more power. And even if that's true, there's like so many things that you can still do in that situation. And going back to how you were categorizing sort of like this male or masculine energy kind of default narrative of like what negotiation is. I'd love if you could speak because one thing that I'm always encouraging clients to do is like you said, take a breath and like uh, create this boundary and this space to give you. And I think that's really these massive deals don't happen in an afternoon. Like you can
yeah,
say, let me get back to you, or
yeah,
I need 24 hours to think about this. And I think this um, default story is like, in order to be powerful, I need to have all the answers right this minute and
yeah.
quick response, which is just like not really where our superpower lies in this whole situation.
Totally, totally. And I've always said, people I've worked with that are similar. It's almost like you feel like you're a reflector rather than a, react straight away kind of person. That's definitely how I feel about things. And so I had to figure out like, why do I feel like I'm always thinking about these things afterwards and I can come back at it better? There's so much going on in those situations. So first of all, I want to say it, and just to be clear, it's never about heading into a negotiation, male or female type thing. It's never specifically a gender thing.
Mhm.
You can as a woman, you can come across a negotiation with another woman and feel exactly the same as you do with a
Of
man.
course, of
So,
course.
um, um, I think really there's so much going on in those instances. And one of the things, again, to get back to that neuroscience, but neurons that fire together wire together. And you probably heard that saying before. So if you've had experiences where you've been in that situation where you're You haven't felt that it's gone well, and it hasn't. You've had that amygdala take over. You've had that, well, sweaty palms. Everything's kind of feels like it's gone wrong. That can help build into a narrative for the next time that you're going in. So you kind of get into a bit of a feedback loop. And that means that generally we're setting ourselves up with a little bit of a pre-story and when we're heading it,
Mm.
especially if we know it's coming. So we're kind of, oh my God, I've got to talk to, you know, Simone tonight, and we've really got to knuckle down on what their price is on this contract. And so you're starting to, already play in your head, how is this going to go? Now, often what we trick ourselves to and what our brains trick us to is saying, well, I'm preparing for this discussion. So this is why I'm ruminating in this way. But
Mm.
what you're not preparing, what you're doing is reinforcing that feedback loop, telling yourself this negative story of what's going to happen. So it's really important to just recognize that and step away. And some of the things that we can do is really just taking a breath, like you said, and taking pause. Very, I mean, if you think about any deals, any discussions, agreements that you have, most of the time a deadline is completely made up. It's just one side of the story deciding that we need to make a deal at this time. So, sometimes just having that in mind as you're walking into a discussion is, any deadline on this is made up. We're here to cooperate and find a path forward. That can be really empowering too as you're walking into any discussion, is just understanding that sometimes things are just made
Time
up.
is made up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time is made up. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as you're talking about this, we know that mirror neurons fire when we observe emotions in others, and I love that that's like something that is it Chris Voss, that book I highly recommend anyone.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
he talks
Great
a lot
book.
about mirroring, and I learned that actually a lot in my trauma-informed hypnosis in terms of like building rapport with people across the board, this
Yeah,
mirroring concept. So, which means like empathy isn't just a nice to have, it's actually hardwired into how we connect.
yeah,
How can women specifically leverage this neurological advantage as a form of soft power in negotiations rather than seeing this emotional intelligence as a weakness?
yeah, exactly. And I think part of that is exactly, as you say, it's walking and knowing that, having that in your mind when you're heading into a discussion is like my superpower here is that I'm able to empathize. I'm able to slow down, take a breath. I'm able to really deeply listen. Chris Voss talks a lot about it. In his book and when he speaks is just really deeply listening to what's being said at the table and trying to understand sometimes that hidden context behind what's being said or um, you know just understanding the other side of the table. And I mean, if you look at the situation of the world right now, and I say this all the time, it's if only we could just take a breath and empathize and try to listen to each other. I think a lot more cooperation could happen globally. It's just,
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
it's
it's
a
so interesting. Kamala Harris talked about this on the Diary of the CEO interview she just did. And I think it's just so important for us to remember this day and age, like so going back, Chris Voss talks about the difference between empathy and sympathy. Like
yes,
you're not handing out hugs, you're just
no,
deeply trying to put yourself in their shoes, understanding where they're coming from. And
yes,
then where I was going is what's different today is that we are literally being given different data sets on what's fact, what's news.
yeah,
So it's not even that you have to understand that they're potentially coming from a different place because
yes.
they just don't have the same information that you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is again, it's why listening is such a critical skill in that. And exactly as you said, it's empathy, not sympathy. You are there to make a deal and to advocate for yourself. So you do need to keep that in mind. But when you're listening and you're able to really engage with what's being said, you can really get the context behind, but also you can, it's really disarming. Kindness is super disarming. If you can take a second to ask a question, exactly.
The
It's
whole
a
kill
little
him
bit
with
of a
kindness thing, I love
exactly. It's, there's a
it.
lot of truth behind that saying if you can, if someone's coming in at you very aggressive, thinking, I'm here to negotiate and I'm going to get this deal, there is nothing more disarming than a huge smile and, okay, cool, tell me what we're talking about today, or tell me what's bothering you, or, one of the most powerful things that I like to say, even in the heat of a big argument, is I don't agree with what you're saying, but I would really like to hear more. And it can just open up. You're not letting go of your boundary and you're not moving beyond where you need to be, but you're
Mm.
able to open up a dialogue and hear more. And sometimes, yeah, you'll end up agreeing with them, or sometimes you'll at least hear enough of the point of view that you can figure out another path forward.
Yeah, because I mean, part of it is one thing that's empowering is understanding your own neuroscience, like what's going on,
Yeah.
but then also understanding theirs.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
they're sitting in fight or flight, they're not in a great place for you to meet in the middle.
100%. And that's one of the key things to remember heading into any kind of conflict is you might be feeling this way. Chances are the person on the other side or the people on the other side are feeling exactly the same way. So, um, yeah, kindness can be disarming. Cooperation can be disarming. You
Mhm.
don't need to give up boundaries to get progress. You can be very clear on your boundaries and still find a, amicable and even friendly way through a lot of these things. Yeah.
I love that. So there's research showing that cortisol, our stress hormone, spikes differently for women in competitive situations compared to collaborative ones. You just mentioned collaboration. So I'd love to dig
Yeah.
on that a little bit. How can we use this insight to redesign how we approach negotiations, tapping in again to that soft power as a
Yeah.
strategy and actually working with our neurobiology instead of against it?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. And, I think it all comes down to exactly these things. It's just rewiring what these discussions look like and rewiring what conflict looks like. Um, Remembering that what we've been told for a long time is not reality, that, having a high stress, high conflict situation isn't necessarily going to yield the best results. So it's just being aware that there are other ways to get through things. And just, I would say you're not going to, even after coaching, you're not going to walk into your next discussion necessarily feeling like, oh my God, I'm a superstar at this. This is something that, we negotiate every day, all day with our spouses, with our children.
Some of this doesn't work, I don't think, all the
No,
time.
you're right, it doesn't. But with our co-workers, we're having these micro negotiations all the time, and so a lot of it is just creating that awareness. And it's like any skill, the more you use it and the more you think and the you know more mindful you are of what's actually happening in your body with the person that you're talking to, taking that step away from the situation, all of that helps, I think, move forward. And as a woman myself, and I will say, like, part of the reason that I moved into this area of coaching is that I felt like the only people that had ever coached me on negotiation were men.
Mm.
And they a lot of them have been wonderful, wonderful people, and they've taught me some fantastic skills. But I knew that how I deal with a conflict and how I deal with a negotiation and how I move through the world is very different, and my lived experience is very, very different. So I had to figure out a way that I can do this authentically for myself. And as I spoke to more women, I realized, yeah, there's a gap here where we're not feeling that this is the right kind of transaction for us, that we need to figure out a different path. And to your point, find those, I don't want to necessarily say feminine skills, but those women, those deep core things that as women we know that we're really good at, and capture them and use them in that way.
Yeah, like we tend to be better at reading the room, which is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's cues you can pick up the second you walk into a room of these discussions, right?
Well, and I know you don't really delve into this, but to me, it's like also we're just better at sensing other people's energy and
Yeah,
kind of like using that to our advantage. So, and following our intuition.
yeah,
I love because one thing that I love, I mean, this is like you said, applicable to the day to day. Our conversations are like who's going to do the dishes next week to, massive deals, sales. But I love how you really support women through either contract or salary negotiations because I think there's still, sadly, this massive pay
yeah,
gap in so many
yeah.
industries, if not all of them. And so can you talk us through like what does that look like? Do you support her during that actual time, or is it like leading up to when she knows a salary increase is on the table? Or do you
Yeah.
encourage her to like ask for it, or
Well,
all of the above?
really all of the above, because what I find is generally when people are at the point of, I need to negotiate my salary, it's usually because they've got a merit increase or something happening soon and they want to be able to advocate for themselves, or they're starting a new job and they want to advocate in that contract. But I think, to your point, where a lot of the time we're not asking for what we need early on. And you can be very proactive in these discussions too, right? So, yeah, I think a lot of that the salary discussion piece is so personal, and that's probably the most triggering for most women. So generally, for me with coaching, I get involved. Usually, someone's already got something coming up, and that's why they've engaged with me in the first place. They've got a new
Mm.
job coming, or they're negotiating their salary again, their merit increase, something like this. Um, and we'll work through in the beginning talking about just all of the things really that we've talked about today, just having a little bit more a self-awareness of what's happening in your brain at the time, finding the techniques to learn to walk away, to pause, to use all of these skills, listening skills, all of this. And we practice that beforehand, and then I work with them through as well. So they can have that first discussion. We can come back. We can talk about where it's landed. It's never unless you've said, "Yep, I agree. Everything's signed off. We're done." Often these discussions can take longer. Like I said, time's made up. So you can have a discussion. You can come back. And you can rework it and you can go back again. There's no set rules for these things. They're really arbitrary, made up. So yeah, we just work through all aspects of that discussion.
Hmm. And like you kind of said off the top, these deals or negotiations, it's fairly only all about money, right? Like I think sort of understanding that there's different leverages that you can pull. Obviously in salary negotiations, that's a part of it, but maybe it's more vacation time. Like there's different ways that that can feel like you're being compensated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually for women a really big part. And what I've learned in these discussions with most women, those parts are often more important than the actual number. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
the flexibility too, I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah, like moms, just having the time to be able to know that, if my children are sick, I can work from home. That sometimes it feels like a deal breaker, but opening up the dialogue and having the discussion can really move things forward. I would say one of the things that probably makes women more nervous than men in these situations is especially when there's children involved, because I think mothers find it very difficult to advocate for the needs of their family when it comes to work. Because what we don't want to be seen as is, oh God, this woman's had a baby. Now she's come back and she's not, pulling her weight in the team. And so that's probably the most important advocation you can have for yourself is that time in
Yeah, like
life.
not perce sadly, we're still looking at motherhood as a weakness. I don't know if you know
Uh,
this. There's this massive organization. You can put like motherhood on the resume, which like basically, I have 12 years experience like negotiating under high pressure situations, like
yeah,
a child screaming at me and
yeah,
like all these other things, or, making decisions quickly, doing 15 things at the same time. Like
yeah.
uh, you know, being a mother actually makes you so much more
Oh my
resilient as a
God, so
human.
much more, so much more. And, we joked before that a lot of these tips don't work on children. And I would say, like, yeah, because, you're dealing with little humans that don't have a fully
The
developed
frontal
prefrontal
cortex is
cortex.
still
So
not with
often
you.
they
Yeah.
just can't make those decisions in that area. And yeah, and I think, my oldest is only just about to turn 4. So,
Oh, bless you.
I,
Those are hard times. I mean,
they're hard
extremely
times. And
rewarding as well, but yeah.
absolutely. But I tell you what, it definitely has taught me. Um, and I think every woman goes through this, like, oh my God, I cannot believe how much the women I've worked with before that are mothers, wow, like how much they've achieved and how hard they work, and knowing that they also have these humans at home to look after. I think you go through that transition and you realize, wow, we have some superpowers here.
Yeah, I mean, the cognitive load is insane. Yeah.
It is. It really is. Um,
We'll share the links that you sent me. I'll also share your LinkedIn. What's your sort of preferred way? Do you still do that little masterclass thing that I did with you?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I usually put out some webinars once every 6 weeks or so,
Okay.
and they're free. Just come along, grab some tips.
Yeah, I felt like there was so much value in that.
Yeah, and my real mission is to just help women feel more empowered, particularly women. Men are always welcome in the sessions too, but feel more empowered as they head into discussions, advocating for themselves, negotiating, even professionally. Just some tips to walk away with and feel empowered, and like you can leverage some of those superpowers that we have.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for this conversation and sharing all your wisdom. I really appreciate you coming on to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Wellness as a Way of Life for Women Building the Future. I'm Megan Swan, and I'm honored to support your journey to well-being and leadership. For more insights, resources, and connections, subscribe to my Substack through the link in this episode. It is your go-to hub for wellness strategies, and there's free and premium content. Let's keep building a brighter, healthier future together. Until next time, take care and lead well.